She was a great little kid. It was, you know, it was a pivotal point in my life. I was 32 when she was born, and it was just a wonderful time for my wife and I.
Growing up, I think it was probably different than it was for most kids because I grew up in Alaska.
We were in the middle of a couple hundred acres of timbered area on a bluff above the Anchor River on the Kenai Peninsula.
And we were probably about 16 or 20 miles away from any significant towns.
Allison was 3.5 years older than her younger sister, and they were real close.
I mean, my sister and I especially, we didn't have a ton of friends to play with all the time. So, I mean, we had our animals. We had our dog Pip and, you know, chickens and goats.
They were always building forts and rambling around out in the yard and swinging on fishing buoys and, you know, ice skating and mud puddles and just doing kid stuff. It was a great time for them and for us.
There's pictures of us with goats in the brand new kitchen of our new house, baby goats, bottle feeding them. And there's a perfectly good garage downstairs, you know.
Sledding, and we had a little beat-up little kid snow machine. They were always outside. They were on the horses. They were saddling up the dog.
My dad always wanted a horse, and so he bought one.
I bought her as a 2-year-old, and I went right down to the feed store and bought a $200 saddle and came right home. And
I was probably about 6 months old, and he bought Baleen from the head of the bay. And
I set her up on there for the first time, and my wife took a picture, and that was the fateful day.
And then I had my pony Spot. And that was the horse that I went along on these pack trips. And a pack trip is like, my dad would go out hunting. Hunting's a big part of I mean, we grew up eating fish and moose every year. I mean, that was how we got our meat every year. And it was really fun. I mean, it was a really great bonding experience. My dad and I have always been pretty close. And then we did 4-H, and I was rodeo queen, Happy Valley rodeo queen at 13 years old. You know, I played sports all the rest of the year. Alaska's really indoor sports kind of place. And then all summer long, I mean, that was all we did. We were out in the middle of nowhere, just rode horses all day long, kind of. I don't remember a time when I wasn't on a horse. Both of my parents are very family-oriented, very hardworking, very loving and supportive. I mean, my parents never missed a basketball game, a life event. I mean, still don't. I mean, they're the only reason that I've been able to do any of the things that I wanted to do.
Well, obviously you have very great parents, and horses have obviously been a very important part of your life. And I know that, you know, I wouldn't have changed a thing. Not having horses would have just changed me completely.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So what does it mean, you know, for you having your dad give you that give horses into your
Well, I think it was more that he'd kind of grown up watching cowboys and Indians. He grew up in Stockton and played football and stuff. But my family is originally from Oklahoma, and so my grandpa had grown up with horses. And when I was born, my grandpa moved to Alaska, and my dad I think had always wanted a horse and literally just bought one. I mean, like a 2-year-old from the head of the bay. And brought her home and saddled her. My grandpa helped a little bit with her, and that was our first horse. And I mean, we had a string of different horses off and on, kind of pack and hunting horses. A lot of those pictures there were from a pack trip that we went on when I was 5 to Resurrection Pass. My dad and I had been out caribou hunting and then came back and took me out. I was 5 on my little pony. And I mean, it was a huge part of growing up the summers. I mean, it's really different than it is here. There's just nothing to do other than, I mean, you kind of have to fill your time with things like that, and that's what we did. It was I wouldn't have changed it for a thing. I mean, now it doesn't seem like it was that significant, but I mean, when I really look at how we lived, it was, I mean, a big part of hunting was how we ate all year. Fishing was a big part of it. My parents had a garden. We had goats. I grew up on goat's milk till I was, you know, about 7, and that was a big part of our lives. And I still, I mean, that mare that you see me sitting on, we have still. She's 36 years old and roams the property, and that was pretty fun. I'm a columnist for the Northwest Horse magazine, and was on the cover this last in February for the Washington State Horse Expo, and it was really cool to be able to have her live long enough to be in a place where she could be on the cover of a magazine. You know, we've been trying to take all these pictures for that cover with my stud or whatever, you know, make me look cool, and she came wandering up, you know, and my old dog was there, and we kind of just took a couple of pictures, and they turned out great, you know, so that's what ended up being the cover.
She's been with you from the get-go.
Yep, for sure. That's going to be a huge, she's been in my life longer than anyone but my parents, even than my sister. I mean, for a long time.
Well, gotta love it. I'm envious. I can only hope that I have a horse that lives that long someday. So Alaska's obviously a big part of your life, and now there's a big event that you're part of. The Great Alaska Horse Expo.
Correct, yeah. So I started getting involved in presenting at some expos and stuff, and I always struggled to get home and visit, and I try to go back and judge a few horse shows, and you know, growing up there, I always just thought, man, it's so hard to. I mean, I didn't think at the time. At the time, I thought it was awesome, but and we had a great 4-H leader, Shirley Cox, who really worked very hard to make sure we had lots of events to go to. I mean, she was very significant in my experience of what. I mean, looking back, I don't think I realized how significant it was to have such a strong woman there leading you through things. But I mean, that probably had a huge impact on me, more than I thought. And so then I got out and went to college and started showing and doing everything. All I could think about was how, I wish I would have had this experience as a kid, you know, and had all this information. And so I've really wanted to be able to bring that back. And that is true. I mean, there's not a lot of structured training right up there because you have to, I mean, nobody's going to make a living training horses in Alaska. Like, that's not even possible. And so, but the more I kind of got into then thinking about planning this expo, which was, you know, I was involved in the Washington State Horse Expo this year, and I thought, this would be a great way to bring things back to Alaska is put on an expo. And the more I started doing that, the more I realized how unique the Alaska Horseman is as well. So now I'm putting together the Great Alaska Horse Expo. It is June 22nd through the 24th in the Nilchik, Alaska, which factually is where I went to horse camp every year. I mean, we wanted to do it in a more central location, but the Kenai Peninsula State Fairgrounds really stepped up and helped us have it there. And it's literally like the bunkhouse where I went to horse camp every year. I mean, I just waited every year to go to that. And so we're going to be hosting it there. We have a great slate of clinicians that are coming up. We have Cade Mills, and he's been participating in a lot of the trainers' challenges and stuff, and is really a great hand. He's going to be doing some colt starting and roping up there. Ray Lockhart does a lot of like practical horsemanship stuff and obstacle training. He's going to be there. Kimberly Barber is going to be there. She does Western dressage and jumping. There's a big pony club up there, so that's really important. And you know, we're going to have Mission Farrier School, which is a really cutting edge kind of group of farriers there coming up. And Mark Plumley and his wife are going to be there teaching a little bit about that. And I'm sure I'm probably leaving somebody out, but.
That's why you visit
the website. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there doing cow horse stuff. Yeah, visit the website. The other thing that we're going to be hosting is the Great Alaska Cowboy Race, which is a competition where it's going to kind of feature the Alaskan competitors, and they're going to come and do kind of obstacle courses, timed and judged, that are going to be around like kind of common Alaska events. There's going to be a reindeer there. Crash the Reindeer is going to be there. Pretty excited to have him there, do some horsemanship stuff with reindeership stuff. So I'm pretty excited about that. And so we'll be featuring, and actually Otz Kilcher is going to be hosting that, and he's Jules' father. He was my music teacher growing up, and is a really neat person, and has offered to kind of lend a hand helping host that. So we're really excited about it.
Well, obviously, that's just one of the many things that you have going on besides your horsemanship program, besides Willfully Guided and Coastal Equine, which is where you operate out of.
Correct.
So we are going to have to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to learn more about what Allison has going on in the equine industry these days. She's really doing a lot to give back and help other people realize how important horses can be to a person, and not just in the show ring, but in life in general. So stick around. We'll be back with more on Horse Talk Live. Thanks for coming back to join us for more Horse Talk Live on Rural TV. I'm your host, Lizzie Iwersen, and we're getting to know Allison Trimble today. She is a very important part of the horse industry these days. She's a woman making big strides and helping horse people establish a better relationship with their horse. She herself has been through all of it, pretty much, starting horses, finishing horses, and showing horses, and being very successful at it. But she has a little bit of an interesting story, because for the most part, those of you watching at home are living in the lower 48, but Allison grew up in Alaska. And there's probably some challenges that go along living in Alaska. when you have
yeah,
horses?
for sure, for sure. You have to be pretty committed if you want to own horses in Alaska, that's for sure.
Well, we have a video, and we get to meet Allison's dad on that video and learn about what it's like growing up in Alaska and trying to be a cowgirl. And we'll go ahead and